Good evening, Sec DSM. Hope everyone is having a great evening tonight. My name is Kevin White, and I'm here to speak to you about the May Mini CTF. So, before I get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've been in the IT industry, so to speak, since the late 90s. I started out doing cash register repair and PC repair. From there, I went to a small municipal government where I happened to be when 9/11 hit. And that really got me interested in the whole aspect of InfoSec and network protection and so on. You get the idea. Managed to talk my leadership there into letting me start attending things like DEF CON, Freaknik, Black Hat, and my love of InfoSec just grew from there. So while I was working with that municipal government, I was also in the Tennessee Army National Guard, wound up getting deployed from 2004 to 2005 over in Iraq. But when I came back, I got right back into the swing of things, going to the conferences, staying involved. Ended up moving back to the St. Louis area, if you can't tell, where I've now worked my way into an architect role with a major healthcare system. So, as an architect, my daily job isn't a lot of fun, like doing CTFs or pen testing and whatnot. Even for those of you that do pen testing, you probably get the idea that there's a lot more documentation and a lot less fun involved with that. So, with that, when I do see things like this, I like to try and participate where I think I might have a chance. CTFs aren't my forte. Um, I usually do pretty well with the Sans Holiday Hacker Challenges. I've been on their list a few times as far as the reports I've turned in there, but um, in a nutshell, what got me interested in this one was I saw that that guy had posted this in our veteran security forum around May the 4th, I believe. And at first, it kind of intrigued me, but there wasn't really that uh, bait there to really lure me in. Now, the second day, he did post the bait that really got me hook, line, and sinker. So, for those of you that were following him, you probably saw him post the cats meme here. Again, that's early 2000s. That's like a core memory for me. Uh, just getting into InfoSec at that time. So this got me immediately right away. What I see here is, the base is highlighted. So I had to go check it out, right? Now, of course, I get to this, and there's not a whole lot here to really work with. The guy gave me the file. It's everything I need for the mini CTF. Maybe I can solve it. Um, what really kind of sticks out to me is we have something that kind of resembles a waveform here. But you've got this red line separating in the middle. You've got basically a top and a bottom to this thing. And that immediately kind of came off as something that's probably pretty important to this. Uh, but without really digging into that right away, the first thing I went to are, the old tried and true things that a lot of people want to do. So, of course, I decided to start with, like low hanging fruit first, see if I could find any more hints out there. Strings was kind of my first pass at this. I see the hint in here for someone specific that strings isn't going to be what you need for this. I moved on from this to bin walk to try and examine the file further. I didn't see anything in there. It did show it was compressed data and there wasn't an archive in here or anything else to mess with. I poked at it with a couple of steganography tools just to see if they would give any kind of hint. But I really just had to fall back on my main hypothesis that it really was the image. It really was going to be evil, and that this idea of above and below the line were the big things here. So I decided to move on from my local tools at this point, do some Google dorking because I've never participated in one of that guy's CTFs before, and I wasn't sure what level of evil he was capable of. Was he just pulling off of someone else's idea, which he wasn't? But it does turn out that there was someone that had a very similar idea. Through my searches, I finally got around to this page here, where the CTF write up about Verticode existed. Now, I'll leave it to you to go figure out what Verticode actually is if you want to delve into it some more. But the premise is that you have an ASCII character that's encoded using some pixels in an image and a color that's shifting what that value actually is. So while I knew that this wasn't what that guy used, uh, it kind of helped kick me in the right direction. And from here, my next stop was to go actually use that AI that that guy said may not help solve this. So after Googling around and kind of feeling out some of these ideas, I decided to go ahead and move on to ChatGPT. Now, I did ask it about the verticode, and in unusual fashion, it actually wasn't very sure about that. It normally is confidently wrong about things. In this case, it was kind of on the fence. It could be related, it might not be related. I just decided to move on from there and tackle this more from, can I get this thing to do the decoding for me? It won't. It'll tell you about techniques that you might try, but it really doesn't help a whole lot. So I did a little bit more research on the interwebs about how I might be able to analyze this image. Came up with the pillow library. So I went in and gave ChatGPT a very specific set of requirements around the code that I wanted. I wanted to use this ChatGPT, or excuse me, I wanted to use the pillow library to analyze this image, gave it some assumptions I had about it, what I really wanted it to do. And of course, it confidently tells me, sure, you can do this. It gives me some code. Now, this code did go through several iterations, a lot of frustration with it. At some point, I was kind of getting some stuff here and decided to go down a rabbit hole of hex encoding because maybe I thought uh, that guy was that evil. But I backed up from that pretty quick, and then went on to actually analyzing these things. Actually started coming out with some binary and some stuff that looks like base 64. These looks like thing I can actually use. So I kept on with that line of prompting ChatGPT to come up with something a little bit better. One thing I did run into a lot is I would provide it some code or prompt it to use code prior to what uh, it had given me, and it would give me the wrong stuff. But eventually I got to this point here where it did start to give me the code I was looking for. It got me out part of a string, and I could see just that small piece of plain text in there. I knew I was right on the cusp of getting this AI, this language model, to actually give me code that worked. And it wasn't far from there where we actually did get it to work. Now, once I did actually have some working code that was giving me valid base 64 output, it was giving me most of the string I wanted. I did have an error in here, and that was that I was kind of wrongly assuming that the top and the bottom might be connected and that I should just string them both together. I pretty quickly figured out that the top and the bottom were a little bit different from each other. And it was kind of clicking that, we had the base 64, we had the 32 hint out there. So it was probably time to split these things apart and go down a different path with the bottom half of this image. So as you can imagine, I started prompting GPT again to give me something new to deal with this bottom part. And it just kind of got off the rails a little bit and took me down rabbit holes that were connected to rabbit holes that were connected to rabbit holes. I was in free fall for a long time trying to get something useful out of ChatGPT. And at this point, I hadn't thought yet, do I go try Bard? Do I go try Bing, one of the other things? I just wanted to focus just on this one model for now. I tried a lot of different things as far as here's the binary string, decode this. It just wouldn't do it. And it took me down lots of different rabbit holes trying to decode integers or whatever into uh, an actual ASCII string. What I actually ended up doing to solve this was taking the easy route. I looked at the RFC, and essentially ended up writing another little program to encode the flag back into integers and base 32 and comparing them against the results I was getting out of previous iterations of this program. And what I found out that it was matching. It wasn't anything necessarily with the code that was wrong, so to speak. It was the decoding section itself that just wasn't right. Something in that uh, base 64 to base 32 to converting to integers to bytes to characters to ASCII just wasn't working. And I couldn't get, after all of these different iterations, the code to work. So I finally said, screw it. We're going to do this the easy way. Create a lookup table, and it confidently, of course, told me 10 is going to be okay. I'm like, great. If this is how it really works, this is how it really works. So from here, we move on to the start of the show. We've got the output of this exercise, which was the code that solves it. I don't want to go through this line by line because that's really just too tedious. I think you guys can see the code, you can read it. We can talk about it in the Q&A if anybody has any specific questions about it, and maybe someone can help me solve a problem that I still have in the code that I haven't really figured out with it. But we've got our modules we import. We measure the size of the image so we know how big this image is going to be as far as looping through each X line on that. And one thing that may kind of throw you off a little bit is you have to remember this is working from the top down. So your Y0 is in your top left corner, and then it works its way down to go up, which, after maybe some heavy drinking or something, you might be looking at some of this code here and asking yourself, why is Y less than the red pixel on top? That's why. It's because of that. So again, there's a lookup table that I wound up using for the base 32. And I did hard code the red pixel here because it wasn't worth trying to measure it out and find it. I also have some code down here that is basically discarding either value if there's nothing on either side of it. And that may end up being somewhere where my problem is. I don't know. But if we remember on this image, at the far left, there was some blank space, and at the far right, there was some blank space. So it's basically discarding that and leaving us just with the data we want. Now for the top, I went down this path with GPT where it wants me to convert it to binary and then convert that again and convert it again. And we eventually end up with this base 64 string, which then gets decoded into the solution. For the bottom part of it, it was a little bit more simple. We had the lookup table. And as we're going through that, we're just taking the length and getting that character for it. We're building out that string. We join it together and then we print it out. And that all happens down here at the bottom with the print statements. And now we'll actually see the code work. We will run the MiniCTF py, and now we get our output. Now the thing that threw me off on the top, which didn't actually keep me from, essentially solving this, was there are two characters in here, one in CTF, which it decoded as CDF, and at the end of Discord here, it has a comma instead of a period, which is kind of misleading. Like, is there supposed to be some more after this? You can see that base 64 decode pulled in some extra stuff here that it read because the base 32 is not as an efficient algorithm. So there was more data on the bottom. And for some reason, I got some of the stuff on the top because either the top or the bottom had numbers, and it was just happy to go ahead and keep adding it on. So not a big deal. We got the puzzle solved on this. Though I would still like to go back and debug this. Why did this top decode the way it did? But that's it. That's the solution. I do have some takeaways for this, which I will pull up here now. So first takeaway is ChatGPT and a lot of these other LLMs still have some shortcomings, but they aren't entirely useless. They will send you down rabbit holes that can have you scratching your head for hours if you don't fact check them as you go. I could have probably spent my time better to either just look at the modules and figure out how they worked, but I decided to just, be the idiot, right? Keep trying the same thing over and over to see if I could coerce ChatGPT into doing what I really wanted it to do. And in some cases it worked, in some cases it didn't. Now, after all this, I did go back and mess with Bard a little bit. Bard was a little bit different to use. It's the first time I really tried it for something like this. It gave me multiple solutions that looked similar to this, and then it gave me some other better solutions too. But I haven't actually tried any of them to see if they work yet. Maybe another day, right? The next takeaway I had: sometimes easy is better. That's what happened with the um, base 32 part of it. I just went straight to the lookup table instead of using all these conversions. That's what was really throwing ChatGPT off, was trying to do all these conversions around padding issues, syntax errors, all kinds of weird stuff it was doing. Um, and in hindsight, I could have done the same thing for the top half of it. It could have been encoded the same way and saved a lot of time as far as trying to convert between all these different types. The next thing I will say is that guy makes evil CTFs. I wouldn't say this one was diabolical because I'm an architect now and I was able to solve this. Uh, I would definitely recommend, if you're thinking about getting into a management or an architect track, make sure you still can get your hands on the keyboard, because half-life as far as your skills in coding go is a real thing. And lastly, it's great to see active groups like SecDSM. I definitely appreciate your time and listening to my talk about this great little challenge. I look forward to more of these and hope I get an opportunity to participate again. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let your gracious host here switch over to the Zoom meeting, and we'll have a Q&A session. Thank you very much.
So I have a question.
Craig has a question.
Is it actually CTF or is it CDF? It should be CTF. Seeing that problem, I will double check it.
Is it actually CTF or CDF? So on the base 32 one, it decoded to CTF, Charlie Tango Foxtrot, and that is the channel I put it in. So I'm still curious to go back and play with that base 64 string a little bit more and see where the error was in that.
Okay, the question is, how did the challenge change the approach to prompting AI? Let me type that out.
How did the challenge change the approach to prompting AI? Change my approach. So I found myself having to be very specific about the questions I was asking it, the way I was trying to prompt it to give me code. In some cases, I was actually finding that it would iterate on the code it had, but then sort of get off track with me. So I'd have to go back and maybe actually paste back in a working piece of code and basically say, hey, you gave me this code, it works. Now just change this piece of code to do the next little piece, add in the base 64 decoding, or trying to add in this piece to do the the base 32 decoding. So it was very, very tedious, very frustrating. I think I spent probably 2 hours on the base 32 part of it, fighting with it, trying to get it to decode that, and I just finally gave up. Right? It's it was very frustrating, and I just threw the towel in and said, let's go head on at this and do it another way.
Is he what? Another question we have is, are you doing any cool AI stuff at major health company?
So, not directly. Um, I'll say that I think it's not really a secret to keep. I work for Mercy Healthcare here in St. Louis,
we've got something like 25 hospitals, and I have no idea how many, outpatient facilities and other little things we've got. A couple months ago, we actually announced a partnership with the Mayo Clinic where we are going to start de-identifying data. So that's where the AI is going to come in. This is something that they've already worked out, I think, I think Duke University is one of the other places they've worked this out. So we'll basically take a small subset of data where they run our stuff through it, they de-identify it, they have a third party come in and audit it to make sure that not only is it de-identified enough for the population groups we have, but for all the other ways that someone could possibly come through and re-identify that data. So our part in that is really just the architecture, the infrastructure, making sure that we have a place that we own to keep that PII and health data safe, and that AI model runs on it. Once it does that on a small subset of the data, then it pushes it through into another environment where 100% of the data we have gets de-identified through this machine learning AI model they've got. And then from there, researchers either at Mayo or Mercy or any other company, I think they're actually going to sell access to this data where people can come in and run their own queries and look at things and say, at Mercy versus Mayo versus anywhere else, if a person was treated for diabetes, how were their outcomes on drug A versus drug B? So it's really an exciting time to be in healthcare with this stuff coming through, because there are some really bright people working on this idea of how can AI find the best outcomes for people's healthcare. Now, if I turn my tinfoil hat around a little bit, maybe I could say they're going to try and figure out how to extract more money out of people, but my tinfoil hat's not on at that point yet, so hopefully hopefully they just keep it to helping people with their outcomes.
Any other questions for him?
I think it's just the researchers we're going to extort for money.
Ooh, that's a good one. The question was, when are we going to see his CTF?
My CTF, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking about it. I noticed I was in the Discord CTF channel earlier and saw that the June event is out there. I may or may not be already working on that, but as I was scrolling through it, I'm like, oh, there's not one yet. Maybe I should do one. So hold that idea. I'm definitely intrigued by that, and we'll see. I think that guy may have had a more evil one coming for August. So let's maybe aim for September or October.
Anyone else? Going once? Twice? All right, cool. I'll call it. I'll work on getting this shut down and turn it over to Craig. I think our next one's at 35.
Sweet. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we're going to have one more talk.
You're welcome. I appreciate your time as well. Like I said, I love seeing an active group like this. We've got something here in St. Louis, but we don't do CTF. So, like I said, I'm an architect. So I look for stuff like this because it helps sharpen my skills. So thanks again, everyone. Have a great night. Don't forget, if you have too much to drink, it sounds like you guys have got some good Uber coupons there. So take care. I appreciate it and hope to see you guys in the future.